I'm Rachel Evans, 23, standing in the pouring rain with one suitcase of belongings, watching my childhood home's door slam shut. My mother chose her husband of 8 months over her only daughter. Frank got what he wanted, me gone for daring to have my own dreams. That rainy night was rock bottom, but I never imagined how drastically things would change, or that one day my mother would be the one begging on my doorstep. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe as I share how I turned my biggest heartbreak into my greatest comeback. Growing up, it was always just mom and me against the world. Deborah Evans was everything to me: mother, best friend, and the strongest person I knew. My father died when I was 12 after battling cancer for 3 years. Before he got sick, Dad was my hero, a kind, funny man who called me his little entrepreneur because I was always coming up with business ideas, from lemonade stands to pet sitting services. I remember him teaching me to ride a bike, coaching my soccer team, and our Saturday morning pancake traditions. When he passed, Mom and I formed an unbreakable bond through our shared grief. She was only 34 then, suddenly a single mother trying to keep our middle-class life from falling apart. I'd often find her at the kitchen table late at night, surrounded by bills, silently crying. But by morning, she'd have her brave face on again, ready to take on another day. Mom worked as a dental receptionist during the day and picked up weekend shifts at a local diner to make ends meet. I started helping around the house more, making dinner some nights and doing laundry without being asked. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job at the mall to help with expenses and save for college. Mom initially protested, saying I should focus on my studies, but eventually accepted my help with a mix of pride and sadness. School became my refuge and path forward. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, joined debate club, and volunteered regularly, partly because I loved it, but also because I knew scholarships were our only hope for college. Every night, Mom would ask about my homework and remind me that education was my ticket to a better life. "You're going to have opportunities one never had," she'd tell me, tucking my hair behind my ear. "Your father would be so proud of you." The hard work paid off when I received a substantial scholarship to State University for Business Administration. The day the acceptance letter arrived, Mom took me out for ice cream, a luxury we rarely indulged in. That night, I caught her looking through old photo albums of Dad, whispering to his picture, "She did it, James. Our girl did it." College was transformative. I thrived in my business classes, discovering my passion for digital marketing. Between classes, I worked as a campus tour guide and social media assistant for the alumni office. By junior year, I'd built a small portfolio of freelance work helping local businesses with their social media presence. That's when everything changed. During my junior year of college, Mom met Frank Miller at a friend's barbecue. She was 45, and he was 52, a successful real estate developer who drove a Mercedes and wore tailored suits. Mom hadn't dated much since Dad died, focusing instead on raising me and working. Frank swept her off her feet with fancy restaurants, weekend trips, and the kind of lifestyle she'd never experienced. I was initially happy for her. Mom deserved love and companionship after all these years of sacrifice. But something about Frank made me uneasy from our first meeting. He was polite enough, asking about my studies and complimenting Mom constantly, but his smile never reached his eyes. When he looked at me, I felt like I was being assessed rather than met. "He's just reserved," Mom explained when I mentioned my unease. "Not everyone is as outgoing as your father was." Within weeks, Mom was completely infatuated. She started wearing more makeup, buying new clothes, and checking her phone constantly for his messages. When she wasn't with Frank, she was talking about him, his successful business deals, his beautiful house, his connections to important people in town. "Frank says" became her most common phrase. After only 8 months of dating, Frank proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Mom called me from the hotel, crying with happiness. I forced enthusiasm into my voice while a knot formed in my stomach. The wedding was small but elegant, held at an upscale country club Frank belonged to. I stood beside Mom as her maid of honor, wearing a dress Frank had selected and paid for, smiling until my cheeks hurt. As she said, "I do," I caught Frank glancing my way with what looked like triumph rather than joy. 2 weeks after the wedding, Mom sold our modest home, the one filled with memories of Dad, and moved into Frank's sprawling Tudor-style house in Oakwood Estates, the most affluent neighborhood in our city. I was invited to move into their guest room until I finished college the following year. "It's so generous of Frank," Mom gushed. "You'll have your own bathroom and so much more space than your old room." What she didn't say was that Frank had insisted on it. Families should stay together, he declared magnanimously, though I suspected he simply wanted to keep Mom close and, by extension, control her only child. The first few weeks in Frank's house were awkward but manageable. He was often away on business, and Mom and I tried to maintain some of our old routines when he was gone. But gradually, Frank's presence became more imposing, even when he wasn't physically there. His rules, preferences, and schedules began to dictate our lives. "Frank prefers dinner at exactly 6:30, Mom would say. "Frank doesn't like scented candles in the house. "Frank thinks the television shouldn't be on during meals." Each statement was delivered with an apologetic smile but firm insistence. The mom who had raised me to be independent and think for myself was slowly disappearing before my eyes. As I entered my final year of college, the atmosphere at Frank's house grew increasingly suffocating. What started as preferences evolved into strict household rules that Mom enforced on Frank's behalf. My course load was heavy, 18 credits plus my campus jobs, but Frank seemed to view my education as a hobby rather than a career path. "Business administration," he scoffed one evening over dinner. "Why not something practical like nursing? That's a good career for a woman, stable, respectable." Before I could respond, Mom jumped in. "Rachel's always been interested in business, Frank. Just like her father." Frank's expression hardened at the mention of Dad. "Well, I'm just thinking about her future. These marketing dreams are fine for college, but the real world requires practical skills." This became a common theme. Frank questioned every aspect of my life, my appearance. "That skirt is awfully short for a family dinner, my friends. That Melissa girl seems too opinionated, my career aspirations. Social media marketing is just a fad, and even my study habits. Still at the library at 10 p.m.? What kind of impression does that give?" Mom transformed before my eyes. Her wardrobe changed from comfortable, practical clothes to designer outfits Frank approved. Her friends from the dental office were gradually replaced by Frank's colleagues' wives. Even her opinions seemed to come directly from Frank's mouth. When I tried to talk to her privately about his controlling behavior, she'd become defensive. "Frank just wants what's best for us, Rachel. He has experience in the world that we don't." "But Mom, I'm 22 years old. I don't need a curfew or permission to visit friends off campus." "His house, his rules," she'd reply, repeating Frank's favorite phrase. "He's been generous enough to take us in. The least we can do is respect his boundaries." The boundaries kept expanding. Frank installed a home security system that notified his phone whenever exterior doors opened. "For our safety," Mom explained, though we all knew it tracked my comings and goings. He insisted I share my class schedule and work hours with them in case of emergency. He even suggested I install a location-sharing app on my phone. When I needed money for textbooks, Frank offered to help out, but his financial assistance came with strings. He'd Venmo the exact amount while saying things like, "I know this business degree probably won't pay off, but I'm willing to invest in your education anyway." Each dollar became a debt of gratitude I was expected to repay through compliance. The spring semester of my senior year, I secured an interview for a prestigious marketing internship at Horizon Digital, a growing agency in the city. The position could lead to a job offer after graduation and would provide valuable experience for the social media marketing company I secretly dreamed of starting. When I shared the news with Mom, her first question was, "What does Frank think about this?" I hadn't told him yet, knowing his reaction would be negative. That evening at dinner, I mentioned the interview, trying to sound casual. "Horizon Digital? Never heard of them," Frank said dismissively. "Sounds unstable. You'd be better off working for Williams & Company. My golf buddy Thomas is a senior partner there. He owes me a favor. I could get you something in their administrative department." That's very kind, Frank, but I'm really interested in digital marketing, not administrative work. Digital marketing isn't a serious career path, he said, setting down his fork. It's all smoke and mirrors. No substance. It's actually a growing field with excellent salary potential, I countered, immediately regretting my direct challenge when I saw his eyes narrow. Rachel, Mom interjected, Frank is just trying to help. Williams and Company is a very established firm. I understand that, but it's not what I've been studying for 4 years. The Horizon internship aligns perfectly with my career goals. Career goals, Frank chuckled. At your age, I was already managing a team of 30 and supporting a family. These millennial fantasies about following your passion lead nowhere except back to your parents' basement. The irony that I was already living in his house because of his insistence wasn't lost on me. As graduation approached, I spent more time on campus, returning to Frank's house only to sleep. I worked on my business plan at the library, researched startup costs at coffee shops, and built a portfolio website from my friend Jessica's apartment. Tyler, another marketing major and close friend, helped me draft proposals for potential clients. Thanksgiving brought Frank's extended family to the house, his brother's family, and his elderly mother. Throughout dinner, Frank dominated the conversation with stories of his business triumphs, occasionally highlighting Mom's contributions as his wonderful support system. When his brother asked about my post-graduation plans, I mentioned my interest in digital marketing. Rachel's still figuring things out, Frank interrupted. I've offered to connect her with some real business opportunities, but she's fixated on this social media thing. You know how young people are with their phones these days. His mother chuckled. In my day, we focused on finding a good husband first, career second. Exactly, Mother, Frank nodded approvingly. Rachel could learn something from that traditional wisdom. Something in me snapped. After months of biting my tongue, I couldn't stay silent. Actually, I've already lined up 3 informational interviews with marketing firms, and I'm developing a business plan for my own agency focusing on social media strategy for small businesses. My senior project on digital engagement strategies received the department award last month. The table fell silent. Well, Frank said coldly, sounds like someone thinks they know better than everyone else at the table with actual life experience. I didn't say that, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I'm just sharing my plans since everyone seems interested. Plans require financing, Frank said with a smirk. And whose money will be funding these entrepreneurial fantasies? My own, I answered. I've saved almost every dollar from my campus jobs for the past 3 years. And my startup costs are minimal since it's primarily a service-based business. Frank's face flushed red. He stood abruptly, throwing his napkin on the table. This is the problem with your generation. No respect for those trying to guide you. No appreciation for real-world advice. He stormed out of the dining room. Mom immediately rose to follow him, shooting me a look of profound disappointment. Why would you embarrass him like that in front of his family? She hissed before leaving. I sat there among Frank's relatives, mortified but also angry. His brother avoided eye contact while his wife suddenly became very interested in serving dessert. Only his mother spoke. Young lady, she said sternly, a woman should know her place in a man's home. Later that night, Mom came to my room. I expected her to at least try to understand my side, but instead, she said, you need to apologize to Frank. He's done everything for us and you humiliated him tonight. Everything for us. I echoed in disbelief. Mom, can't you see what's happening? You've changed completely since meeting him. The mom I knew would never let a man dictate her life or mine. That's enough, she snapped. You've ruined Thanksgiving with your selfishness. I don't want to hear another word about it. She left, closing my door harder than necessary. As I lay in bed that night, I realized with painful clarity that I was losing my mother to Frank's influence. More disturbingly, she was choosing this new identity willingly. My graduation day should have been a celebration of achievement and new beginnings. Instead, it marked the end of life as I knew it. The ceremony was on a perfect May morning, sunshine streaming across the university quadrangle as graduates in blue caps and gowns gathered with excited families. I spotted Mom in the crowd, wearing a floral dress and waving enthusiastically. Frank stood beside her, checking his watch repeatedly, his expression making clear he'd rather be elsewhere. After receiving my diploma summa cum laude, business administration with a specialization in digital marketing, I weaved through the crowd to find them. "Congratulations, honey." Mom hugged me tight. "We're so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," I said, clinging to her a moment longer than usual, savoring her warmth. Frank offered a stiff handshake. "Congratulations, Rachel. Now the real work begins." "We have a surprise for you," Mom said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Tell her, Frank." Frank reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Consider it a graduation gift," he said, handing it to me with what almost looked like a challenge in his eyes. Inside was a business card for Williams & Company, accounting firm, with a note. "Rachel, looking forward to having you join our team on June 15th. Orientation at 8 a.m. Thomas Williams." My stomach dropped. "What is this?" "Your first real job," Mom exclaimed. "Frank called in a favor with Thomas. It's entry-level, but there's room for advancement. Isn't it wonderful?" I looked from her eager face to Frank's smug one. I never applied for this position." "You don't need to apply when you have connections," Frank said, straightening his tie. "This is how the real world works, Rachel. It's who you know." "But I don't want to work in accounting. I've been interviewing with marketing firms. I told you about my business plan." "That internet nonsense." Frank scoffed. "This is a real career with benefits, stability, and a clear advancement path. You should be thanking me." Several nearby families glanced our way. I lowered my voice. "I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept this. I have other plans." Frank's expression darkened. "We'll discuss this at home." The drive back to the house was tense. Mom tried to fill the silence with comments about the ceremony, but Frank's rigid posture and white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel telegraphed the coming storm. As soon as we entered the house, Frank rounded on me. "Let's get something straight right now. I've invested in your education, provided you with housing, food, and opportunities most people would be grateful for. And this is how you repay that generosity? By embarrassing me in front of my colleague." "I never asked you to arrange a job for me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "And I never agreed to work for Williams & Company. Do you have any idea what strings I had to pull to get you that position? Thomas rarely hires straight out of undergraduate programs." "Frank," Mom interjected, "maybe we should all calm down and discuss this rationally." "No, Deborah. Your daughter needs to learn about respect and gratitude." He turned back to me. "So, what exactly is your plan?" "To waste your degree on some pipe dream internet business that will fail within 6 months. My business plan is solid," I insisted. "I've already secured 2 clients for after graduation, and I have meetings set up with 3 more next week. I've saved enough to cover my expenses for 6 months while I build my client base." "Clients?" Frank laughed derisively. "Let me guess, your friend's parents and some local coffee shop?" "That's not a business, Rachel. That's a hobby." "One of my clients is Riverstone Brewing Company," I countered. "They're the fastest-growing craft brewery in the state." This was my proudest achievement, landing a legitimate, growing business as my first major client through persistent networking and a solid proposal. Frank waved his hand dismissively. "A flash-in-the-pan craft beer company. They'll be out of business in a year." "Frank," Mom tried again, "maybe we should support Rachel's initiative. She's always been entrepreneurial, even as a child." "Initiative?" he interrupted. "Is that what we're calling blatant disrespect and ingratitude now? I'm offering her a real career, connections most people would kill for, and she's throwing it back in my face to play around on Instagram and Facebook." "It's not playing around," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Digital marketing is a legitimate, growing field. Companies spend billions on it annually." "Enough." Frank slammed his hand on the kitchen counter. "This is my house, and while you live under my roof, you'll abide by my guidance. The Williams position starts June 15th. You will accept it, or you will find somewhere else to live." The ultimatum hung in the air. I looked at Mom, expecting, hoping she would defend me or at least mediate. Instead, she stared at the floor, her hands fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Mom?" I prompted. When she finally looked up, I saw something I'd never seen before, a complete surrender of her own agency. "Rachel," she said softly, "if you can't respect Frank and the opportunities he's providing, maybe you should leave." The words hit like a physical blow. My own mother was choosing her husband of less than a year over her only child. Frank's face registered momentary surprise, followed by a smug satisfaction that made my blood boil. He hadn't expected Mom to side with him so completely. "You have 1 week," he said, his voice now calm and controlled. "Either call Thomas and accept the position, or find new living arrangements." He left the kitchen, heading to his home office, the matter settled as far as he was concerned. Mom and I stood in silence until the sound of his door closing echoed through the house. "How could you?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "Honey," she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Frank is just trying to secure your future. Maybe if you tried it for a little while." "This isn't about the job, Mom. It's about him controlling every aspect of our lives, and you letting him." "He's my husband, Rachel. We need to make this marriage work." "At what cost?" "You don't even sound like yourself anymore. Everything is Frank says and Frank thinks. What happened to the mom who taught me to stand up for myself? Who told me I could be anything I wanted to be?" Her eyes welled with tears. "Life is complicated, Rachel. Sometimes we need to compromise." "This isn't compromise. It's surrender." I wiped away my own tears. "Dad would be heartbroken to see you like this." Her face hardened at the mention of my father. "Don't you dare bring your father into this. You have no idea what it's been like for me all these years, working multiple jobs, never having anything nice, always worrying about money. Frank provides stability and security." "At what price, Mom? Your identity? Your relationship with your daughter?" She took a step back. "You've always been too stubborn for your own good. Just like your father." The comparison, once a compliment, now sounded like an accusation. The next morning, I called Jessica and Tyler. Jessica immediately offered her spare room until I could find something permanent. Tyler promised to help move my things. For the next few days, I packed while avoiding Frank and Mom as much as possible. I boxed up my childhood photos of Dad and me fishing, art projects Mom had proudly displayed for years, books that had shaped my thinking, and clothes that wouldn't fit in my suitcase. On my last night, I tried once more to reason with Mom, catching her alone in the kitchen. "Mom, please. This isn't right." "You know it isn't." She kept washing dishes, not looking at me. "You're making your choice, Rachel. Frank's offer still stands." "It's not a real offer when it comes with complete control of my life." She sighed heavily. "When you're older, you'll understand that sometimes we need to bend to make relationships work. There's a difference between bending and breaking, Mom. He's breaking you and you're letting him." She finally turned to me, her eyes tired. "I love him, Rachel. I need you to respect that. Even if it means losing me." She had no answer. The next morning, rain pounded against the windows as Tyler and Jessica helped load my belongings into Tyler's pickup truck. Frank watched from the living room window, arms crossed, his victory complete. As I carried out my last box, Mom stood in the doorway, conflict evident in her expression. "Rachel," she started, reaching out slightly before letting her hand fall back to her side. She seemed to be fighting an internal battle between maternal instinct and wifely obedience. Frank appeared behind her, placing a proprietary hand on her shoulder. Whatever she might have said remained unspoken. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, the rain mixing with my tears. "You know where to find me if you need me." As Tyler's truck pulled away, I watched the house disappear in the side mirror. 3 miles down the road, the old Toyota sputtered and died, a fitting metaphor for my life at that moment. We sat on the roadside waiting for a tow truck, my possessions getting soaked in the uncovered truck bed. That night, lying on Jessica's pull-out couch, I cried until no more tears would come. I felt utterly abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally. The rain continued to lash against the windows, matching my mood as I finally fell into an exhausted sleep at 4 a.m. Rock bottom had arrived, and it was even lonelier than I'd imagined. The first weeks after being kicked out were a blur of practical challenges and emotional upheaval. Jessica's one-bedroom apartment wasn't meant for 2 people, and though she never complained, I knew my presence disrupted her life. I took the earliest waitressing shifts at a local diner, leaving before she woke up and often returning after she'd gone to bed, just to give her space. The diner job barely covered basic expenses, but it provided immediate income while I pursued my real goal, launching my digital marketing business. Between shifts, I camped out at coffee shops with free Wi-Fi, building my website, creating sample content, and reaching out to potential clients. Riverstone Brewing Company, the client I'd secured before graduation, became my lifeline. The owner, Miranda, took a chance on me after I presented a comprehensive social media strategy during my last semester. My first campaign for them increased their event attendance by 45%, providing both the confidence boost and portfolio piece I desperately needed. "You've got real talent, Rachel," Miranda told me after our successful Oktoberfest promotion. "I've recommended you to a couple of business friends. Expect some calls." Those referrals led to 2 more clients, a boutique clothing store and a local food truck collective. The money wasn't substantial yet, but each successful campaign built my portfolio and reputation. 3 months into my exile, I was still sleeping on Jessica's couch, working waitressing shifts and building my business in every spare moment. My social life had disappeared entirely. My once healthy eating habits had given way to whatever was quickest and cheapest. The dark circles under my eyes had become a permanent feature. "You can't keep going like this," Jessica said one rare evening when we were both home. "You're going to burn out." "I don't have a choice," I replied, not looking up from my laptop where I was designing graphics for the food truck collective. "Rachel," she said, closing my laptop gently. "Look at me. This isn't sustainable. You need your own space and a better balance." She was right. The next day, I started apartment hunting, focusing on the cheapest neighborhoods in the city. I found a tiny studio apartment in an older building with questionable heating but affordable rent. The day I signed the lease and received my keys felt like my first real victory. My studio was barely 400 square feet, essentially a box with a bathroom and kitchenette, but it was mine. I furnished it with second-hand finds, a futon from Goodwill, a wobbly desk from a garage sale, and kitchen items from the dollar store. I hung string lights around the perimeter to soften the harsh overhead lighting and pinned my business plan to the wall as a daily reminder of my goals. 6 months after moving into my studio, I landed my biggest client yet, a regional chain of fitness centers looking to increase their social media presence. Their marketing director had seen my work for Riverstone and wanted similar results. "Your proposal was more innovative than agencies triple your size," she told me during our first meeting. "We're excited to see what you can do." The contract was significant enough that I could finally quit the diner job and focus exclusively on my business. I celebrated by buying a Real bed to replace the futon and upgrading my ancient laptop. Around this time, I reconnected with Professor Martinez, my marketing mentor from college. Over coffee, I shared my progress and challenges. "You've accomplished more in 6 months than many do in years," she said, impressed by my client portfolio. "But you're approaching burnout, Rachel. You need help." With her guidance, I hired my first freelance assistant, a current student eager for real-world experience. Sharing the workload meant I could take on more clients without sacrificing quality or my remaining sanity. A year after being kicked out, my business, now officially named Evans Digital Strategies, had 5 regular clients and a growing reputation. I'd moved to a larger 1-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood and even started attending networking events to connect with potential clients. I rarely thought about Mom and Frank anymore, at least not consciously. But sometimes at night, I'd dream about my childhood home or wake up thinking I heard Mom's laugh. I'd check my phone, but there were never any messages from her. According to mutual friends, she and Frank were traveling extensively, renovating parts of the house, and fully embedded in his social circle. The emotional wound of her abandonment had scarred over but not healed. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lynn Collins, to process the abandonment issues that were affecting my ability to trust others. "What your mother did was a profound betrayal, Dr. Collins said during one session. "It's natural to struggle with trust afterward. I keep waiting to stop caring," I admitted. "But Even after everything, I still miss her. She was your mother for 22 years before she was Frank's wife. That relationship doesn't disappear overnight, regardless of her actions. These sessions helped me understand that my success wasn't just about proving Frank wrong, it was about proving to myself that I was worthy, capable, and resilient. 18 months after the rainy night I left Frank's house, Evan's digital strategies was featured in a local business journal article about young entrepreneurs. The exposure led to inquiries from larger potential clients, including a regional bank and a popular restaurant group. With the increased workload, I expanded my team to include 5 part-time employees, 3 content creators, a graphic designer, and an account manager. We moved into a small but proper office space in a converted warehouse downtown. Having a professional address and meeting space elevated the business's image and provided separation between work and home. Tyler remained my steadfast supporter throughout this journey. He'd help me move furniture on weekends, bring dinner during late work nights, and provide honest feedback on business ideas. Our friendship deepened through the shared experience of building our careers from scratch. He had launched his own marketing consultancy specializing in nonprofit organizations. "Did you ever imagine we'd be here when we were cramming for finals last year?" he asked one evening as we celebrated landing our respective biggest clients to date. "Not even close," I laughed. Back then, success meant not having to move back home after graduation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. As my business grew, I created what Dr. Collins called a chosen family through friendships and professional relationships. Jessica and Tyler were the core, but my network expanded to include clients who became friends, industry peers, and my dedicated team members. Though I occasionally dated, romantic relationships took a back seat to building my business and healing emotionally. The few men I did see couldn't understand my work ethic or the barriers I'd erected around my heart. "You're always waiting for people to leave," one short-term boyfriend observed during our breakup conversation. "It makes it impossible to get close to you." He wasn't wrong. Trust came slowly, if at all, after Mom's betrayal. The only person I fully relied on was myself, a strength in business, but a limitation in personal relationships. By the 2-year mark since being kicked out, Evan's digital strategies had transformed from a desperate one-woman operation to a respected boutique agency with major clients and a growing team. We'd been profiled in a national digital marketing magazine as an example of innovative social media strategy for small businesses. The girl who once slept on a friend's couch now led strategy meetings, negotiated 5-figure contracts, and mentored marketing students from her alma mater. My business card read Founder and CEO, a title that felt surreal some days. Financial security, professional respect, and personal independence. I'd built everything Frank said I couldn't have without his connections. The victory was sweet, but incomplete. There remained an empty space where my relationship with Mom should have been, a void no amount of success could fill. I had no way of knowing that void was about to be confronted in the most unexpected way. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in October, almost exactly 2 years after I'd left Frank's house in the rain. I was in the middle of a team meeting about our newest client, a luxury hotel chain with locations across 3 states, when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in nearly a year. "Mom." "Excuse me," I said to my team, stepping into my office and closing the door. My heart raced as I answered. "Hello, Rachel?" Mom's voice sounded strange, strained, and shaky. "Rachel, I need to talk to you." "What's wrong?" Despite everything, alarm shot through me at the distress in her voice. "Everything," she said, and then broke into sobs. "Everything's gone wrong. Frank, the FBI came this morning. They've frozen all our accounts. The house is being seized. They're saying he was running some kind of investment scheme and laundering money through his developments." I sank into my chair, stunned. "Mom, slow down. Are you saying Frank's being investigated for fraud?" "Not just investigated. They arrested him 3 hours ago." Her voice cracked. "Rachel, they're saying he's been doing this for years, before he even met me. There were affairs, too. At least 3 women. And previous fraud cases that were settled out of court. He hid everything from me." The irony was almost too perfect. The man who had positioned himself as the voice of wisdom and real-world experience, who had disparaged my business as unstable, was allegedly a criminal and a cheat. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said, unsure what else to offer. "Rachel," her voice dropped to a whisper, "I have nowhere to go. They've sealed the house. I can only take personal belongings. I have some jewelry I can sell, but—" She paused, then added with obvious difficulty, "I was wondering if I could stay with you. Just for a few days until I figure something out." The request hung in the air between us. 2 years of silence, and now she needed me. "You want to stay with me?" I repeated, memories flooding back, the night in the rain, the weeks on Jessica's couch, the endless waitressing shifts, the lonely studio apartment. "I know I have no right to ask," she said quietly. "What I did to you is unforgivable. But Rachel, I'm desperate." Part of me, a vindictive part one wasn't proud of, felt satisfaction. The tables had completely turned. But another part ached at the broken sound of my once strong mother reduced to begging. "I need time to think about this," I said finally. "Where are you staying tonight?" "The Hampton Inn on Westbrook Road. It was the cheapest I could find." "Okay. I'll call you back later tonight." After hanging up, I sat motionless, trying to process the conversation. My team waited in the conference room, but I couldn't focus on hotel marketing strategies anymore. I called Jessica. "Frank's being investigated for fraud. They've seized their assets and the house. Mom asked to stay with me." "Wow," Jessica breathed. "That's a lot. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to say no. After everything." "That would be completely understandable," Jessica assured me. "You don't owe her anything." "I know. But another part of me remembers everything she did before Frank, all the sacrifices, the double shifts, the unwavering support. I wouldn't be where I am without that foundation she gave me." "Maybe talk to Dr. Collins before deciding?" "This is exactly the kind of boundary issue you've been working on." I followed Jessica's advice, calling Dr. Collins for an emergency phone session. We discussed the complex emotions involved, the satisfaction of the role reversal, the lingering hurt, the opportunity for either closure or renewed pain. "There's no right answer here, Rachel," she said. "Either choice is valid. The question is, which decision allows you to live with yourself afterward?" That evening, I called my therapist, searched online for news about Frank, and found several articles about the investigation. The allegations were extensive: wire fraud, money laundering, and investment schemes that had cheated dozens of people out of their retirement savings. One article included a courthouse photo of Mom standing shell-shocked beside Frank as he was led away in handcuffs. She looked thin and pale, nothing like the vibrant woman who had raised me, nor even the glamorous wife Frank had molded her into. She looked broken. As I debated what to do, my phone rang again. "Mom." "Rachel," she sounded even more distraught than earlier. "The media found out where I'm staying. There are reporters in the hotel lobby asking for comments. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes, my decision made. "Pack your things. I'll be there in 30 minutes." The reunion at the Hampton Inn was awkward and tense. Mom waited in the lobby, a small suitcase beside her, looking both older and smaller than I remembered. When she saw me, she started to rush forward as if to hug me, then stopped herself, uncertainty written across her face. I maintained my composure, giving her a brief, stiff hug. "Let's go before more reporters show up." The drive to my apartment was mostly silent, punctuated only by Mom's occasional sniffles and my terse directions about seatbelts and where to put her bag. When we arrived at my building, a renovated factory with exposed brick walls and industrial windows, she looked around with red-rimmed eyes. "This is a nice place," she offered tentatively. "It's convenient for work. My office is 3 blocks away." Inside my apartment, I showed her the guest room, a small space I normally used as a home office, but that contained a pull-out sofa for visitors. "The bathroom is down the hall. Towels are in the cabinet." My tone was businesslike, a landlord showing a tenant the accommodations rather than a daughter welcoming her mother. Mom set her suitcase down carefully. "Rachel, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," I replied, crossing my arms. "But we do need to talk about expectations." "This is temporary, Mom. And there are boundaries. She nodded quickly, wiping away a tear. Of course. Anything. I have an early meeting tomorrow. There's coffee in the kitchen and the Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. We'll talk more tomorrow evening. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Rachel, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for what I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. I stood in the doorway, not turning around, my eyes filling with tears I refused to let her see. We'll talk tomorrow, Mom. That night, I lay awake listening to the muffled sounds of my mother crying in the guest room, wondering if I'd made the right decision or invited renewed heartbreak into my life. The next morning, I left for work before Mom woke up. I spent the day distracted, checking news updates about Frank's case between meetings. The allegations were worse than initially reported. He'd apparently been running Ponzi schemes for over a decade, using new investor money to pay returns to earlier investors while siphoning millions for himself. His real estate developments were largely shell operations for laundering the proceeds. When I returned home that evening, I found Mom sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of cold tea before her, looking lost. She'd aged years in the months since I'd last seen her, new lines around her eyes and mouth, gray strands prominent in her once impeccably colored hair. I made dinner, she said hesitantly, gesturing toward a pot on the stove. Just pasta. I found the ingredients in your pantry. I hope that's okay. The simple domesticity of the scene, my mother cooking in my kitchen, created a lump in my throat. It was both familiar and jarringly out of place after years of estrangement. That's fine, I said, setting down my laptop bag. Thank you. We ate in uncomfortable silence until Mom finally spoke. The investigators called today. They want me to come in for more questioning tomorrow. Do you need a lawyer? I asked. She shook her head. They've made it clear I'm not a target. They believe I knew nothing about Frank's schemes. Her voice broke. And they're right. I was completely blind. How long were you married? Almost 3 years. I kept my tone neutral. 2 years, 8 months. She looked down at her plate. Rachel, I need to explain what happened. Not to excuse it, but so you might understand. I set down my fork. I'm listening. Frank was methodical in how he isolated me. It started with compliments and grand gestures, telling me I deserved better than my struggle, that he wanted to take care of me after all I'd been through. Then came small suggestions about my clothes, my friends, my opinions. She twisted her wedding ring, still on her finger despite everything. When you're lonely for so long, attention like that is intoxicating. Each time I changed something about myself to please him, he'd reward me with affection, trips, jewelry. When I didn't, he'd withdraw completely. That's textbook emotional manipulation, Mom. I know that now, she said quietly. But then, it felt like love. He isolated me so gradually I barely noticed. First from my old friends, then from colleagues, and finally. She looked up, eyes swimming with tears. From you. You chose him, I said, the hurt still raw. You told me to leave. I did, she whispered. That's my greatest shame. I convinced myself it was for your own good, that his connections would give you opportunities. But really, I was terrified of losing him if I didn't support him completely. So you lost me instead. A tear slid down her cheek. Yes. And now I've lost everything else too. The investigators were right, Mom hadn't known about Frank's criminal activities. But she had sacrificed her identity, her values, and her relationship with her only child to maintain his approval. That was its own kind of culpability. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. I have no money, no house, no job. My name is linked to his in all the news stories. No one will hire Frank Miller's wife. You could go back to being Deborah Evans, I suggested. She looked up surprised. I could, couldn't I? It was the first glimmer of the independent woman who had raised me that I'd seen since Frank entered our lives. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't abandon her the way she had abandoned me, but I also wouldn't enable dependence or forego the boundaries I needed. I'll help you find an apartment, I told her the next morning. Something affordable that you can manage on an entry-level salary. And I'll cover the security deposit and first month's rent. Relief flooded her face. Rachel, thank you. I promise I'll pay you back every penny. This comes with conditions, I continued. You need to find a job, any job to start. You need to attend therapy. And we need to establish clear boundaries for rebuilding our relationship. She nodded eagerly. Anything. I'll do anything. I'm not doing this out of obligation, I clarified. I'm doing it because at one time, you were the strongest person I knew. I think that person is still in there somewhere. For the first time since she arrived, Mom smiled, a small, wavering thing, but genuine. I hope she is too, she said softly. The following weeks established a new rhythm as mom, and I cautiously navigated our renewed relationship. I helped her find a small one-bedroom apartment in a modest, but safe neighborhood about 20 minutes from my place. The rent was manageable for someone on an entry-level salary, which became our next goal. I haven't worked in an office for almost 3 years, Mom fretted as we updated her resume. And before that, I was just a dental receptionist. You have administrative experience, people skills, and you're computer literate, I countered. There are plenty of entry-level office jobs you're qualified for. After 2 weeks of applications and 4 interviews, Mom secured a position as a receptionist at a local insurance office. The pay was modest, but it offered benefits and, more importantly, independence. I start Monday, she announced, her voice containing more enthusiasm than I'd heard in years. I bought a new blouse for the occasion on clearance, she added quickly, as if afraid I'd think she was being financially irresponsible. That's great, Mom. I'm proud of you. The words felt strange in my mouth, me, proud of her, when it had always been the reverse. But they were true. Each small step she took toward independence represented significant courage after years of having her autonomy systematically dismantled. We established a standing Sunday dinner date, a neutral, time-limited way to maintain connection while respecting my need for space during the week. The first few dinners were stilted, conversation limited to safe topics like her new job and my business developments. But gradually, as weeks turned into months, we began addressing the elephant in the room, the damage Frank had done to our relationship. I've been reading about emotional abuse, Mom shared one Sunday over pasta. My therapist recommended some books. It's helping me understand what happened, how I changed. What insights have you gained? I asked, genuinely curious. That isolation is the first strategy of control. Frank separated me from everyone who would have raised red flags about his behavior, especially you. She set down her fork. Rachel, you saw through him immediately, didn't you? I nodded. There was something about the way he looked at you, like you were an acquisition, not a partner. I thought it was passion, she said quietly. I mistook possessiveness for love because I was so lonely. These honest conversations, though painful, began knitting together the torn fabric of our relationship. I didn't share everything about my life. The boundaries remained important, but I did invite Mom to visit my office one afternoon to meet my team. This is incredible, she marveled, taking in the modern space with our company logo on the wall, the busy team members at their desks, the wall of client testimonials. You built all this yourself? From nothing, I confirmed, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Her eyes filled with tears. Your father would be so proud. It was the first time since before Frank that we'd spoken of Dad without tension. The mention of him felt like reclaiming a shared history that had been temporarily stolen from us. Meanwhile, Frank's legal troubles intensified. The prosecutor's office reached out to Mom as a potential witness, not for the financial crimes of which she genuinely had no knowledge, but regarding his pattern of controlling behavior. They want me to testify about how he isolated me, controlled our finances, dictated who I could see, she explained, anxiety evident in her voice. They're building a character profile. Are you going to do it? I asked. I think I need to, she replied. Not for revenge, but for truth. And maybe to help me fully break free. The prospect terrified her, facing Frank in court, having her private humiliation made public, but she was determined. In preparation, she finally removed her wedding ring and legally filed to restore her maiden name. Deborah Evans was officially returning. Frank's trial began 6 months after his arrest. Mom testified for only 1 day, but the experience drained her completely. I took the day off to accompany her to court, sitting in the gallery as she detailed the psychological manipulation she'd endured. Frank stared at her throughout her testimony, his expression alternating between cold anger and calculated charm when the jury looked his way. "You did great," I assured her afterward, as we escaped the courthouse through a side entrance to avoid reporters. "I felt like I might throw up the entire time," she admitted. "But also, stronger somehow. Like I was taking back my story." The prosecution built a compelling case. Beyond the financial crimes, they presented Frank as a serial manipulator who used charm and intimidation to control not just his business associates, but everyone in his personal life. Multiple ex-girlfriends testified about emotional abuse similar to what Mom had experienced. 3 weeks into the trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. Frank was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. When the sentence was announced, Mom and I sat together in the back of the courtroom. I expected to feel triumph or vindication, but instead felt only a quiet relief that this chapter was closing. "It's really over," Mom whispered. "A new beginning," I corrected gently. As Mom settled into her independent life, our relationship continued its careful rebuilding. She occasionally asked for advice, but was determined not to become dependent on me. She made new friends at work, joined a support group for women who had experienced similar relationships, and even started taking accounting classes at the community college. "I want to understand finances better," she explained, "so no one can ever control me through money again." I invited her to client events and company celebrations, proud to introduce her as both my mother and a woman rebuilding her life with courage. She, in turn, bragged about my business success to anyone who would listen. 9 months after Mom came back into my life, I finally felt secure enough in our healthier dynamic to introduce her to Tyler as more than just my friend. We had begun dating 3 months earlier, our longtime friendship evolving naturally into something deeper. "I've heard so much about you," Mom said warmly when they met for Sunday dinner. "All good things, I hope," Tyler smiled. "Rachel says you've been her rock through everything," Mom replied. "I can never thank you enough for being there when I wasn't." The acknowledgement, straightforward and without defensiveness, marked how far she had come in taking responsibility for her choices. Tyler and I had moved slowly, both aware of my trust issues. But his steady presence and unwavering support had gradually breached the walls around my heart. With him, I didn't feel the constant need to protect myself from abandonment. "You're different with him," Mom observed after he left that evening. "More relaxed." "He's seen me at my worst and stayed anyway," I replied simply. "That's what real love looks like," she said, a tinge of regret in her voice. Our healing journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments when old hurt flared up or boundaries needed reinforcement. We continued parallel therapy journeys, occasionally attending family sessions together to navigate particularly difficult topics. During one such session, Mom finally asked the question that had hovered between us. "Do you forgive me, Rachel?" Dr. Collins looked at me, giving space for an honest answer. "I'm working on it," I said carefully. "I've let go of the anger. I understand better now what happened to you with Frank. But trust takes longer to rebuild than understanding." Mom nodded, accepting this partial absolution. "I'll wait as long as it takes." A year after Mom reappeared on my doorstep, we had established a new normal, not the unquestioning closeness of my childhood nor the dysfunctional estrangement of the Frank years, but something healthier. A relationship between two independent adults who chose to be in each other's lives with clear boundaries and mutual respect. Evan's digital strategies had grown to 15 employees with clients across 3 states. Mom had been promoted to office manager at the insurance company and was halfway through her accounting certificate. We both had our own lives, but made space to share important moments. The woman who had once surrendered her identity to a controlling husband now contributed thoughtful perspectives in our conversations, disagreed respectfully when our opinions differed, and maintained her own social calendar. The daughter who had once feared vulnerability now opened herself cautiously to deeper connections, including the increasingly serious relationship with Tyler. We were both works in progress, but we were progressing together. The seasons changed, marking the passage of time as Mom and I continued rebuilding our relationship. 1 year became 2, and the raw pain of betrayal gradually transformed into a bittersweet wisdom. The lessons learned through our separation and reconciliation shaped both of us in unexpected ways. My business flourished beyond my initial dreams. Evan's digital strategies grew to a team of 22, with a roster of high-profile clients across multiple states. We moved to a larger office downtown, and industry publications regularly featured our innovative campaigns. What had started as a desperate plan B after being kicked out had become a 7-figure company. Mom thrived in her independent life as well. She completed her accounting certificate and secured a position as office manager for a local manufacturing business. Her apartment, once sparse and temporary feeling, became a warm reflection of her reclaimed identity. Photos of Dad and me that had been hidden during the frank years once again displayed proudly, alongside new symbols of her independence. Our relationship evolved into something I never expected, a friendship between equals. The parent-child dynamic remained in subtle ways, but a new respect had developed as we witnessed each other's resilience. Sunday dinners continued as our tradition, but we also met for occasional lunches, texted regularly, and celebrated each other's achievements. Tyler and I moved in together, taking the next step in a relationship built on friendship, mutual respect, and the gradual healing of my trust issues. He understood the complex dynamics between Mom and me, supporting my boundaries while encouraging reconciliation when appropriate. "You've both come so far," he observed one evening after Mom had joined us for dinner. "It's remarkable to witness." "There were times I never thought we'd speak again," I admitted. And now you're creating something new," he finished. "Something healthier." Family therapy had played a crucial role in our healing journey. Dr. Collins helped us navigate the complicated emotions, establish clear communication patterns, and develop tools for when old triggers resurfaced. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she reminded us during a joint session. "It means choosing to release the anger while still honoring the lessons learned." This framework gave me permission to move forward without pretending the abandonment never happened. I could love my mother while acknowledging the pain she had caused. She, in turn, could accept responsibility without drowning in shame. My experiences inspired me to create a mentorship program through Evan's digital strategies. Once a month, we hosted workshops for young women from difficult backgrounds, teaching digital marketing skills while providing career guidance and emotional support. "Success is the best revenge," I told one particularly downtrodden participant. "But it's even better when you use it to create opportunities for others." Mom found her own healing path through volunteer work with a domestic violence organization, speaking to women about the subtle signs of emotional abuse and control. Her story, from independent single mother to isolated wife to reclaimed autonomy, resonated with many who couldn't yet see their own situations clearly. "If I can help even one woman recognize what's happening before she loses herself completely, it gives meaning to my experience," she told me. The money Mom had received in the divorce settlement after Frank's conviction, a fraction of their former wealth, but still substantial, went mostly to a trust for victims of his financial schemes. "I don't want anything built on others' pain," she explained. 3 years after the rainy night I'd been forced out of Frank's house, I closed on my first home, a charming craftsman with a wraparound porch and room for a home office. The morning after moving in, Mom arrived with houseplants and breakfast. "A home should have growing things," she said, setting a pot hose on the kitchen windowsill. As we ate muffins at my new dining table, the symmetry wasn't lost on me. How many mornings had she provided breakfast and comfort throughout my childhood? Now, in my own home, bought with money I'd earned through my own business, she was still nurturing in the ways she could, but without the old patterns of dependence. "I'd like you to help me decorate," I offered. "You've always had a good eye for pulling rooms together." Her face lit up. "I'd love that. But it's your home, Rachel. Your sanctuary." "I know. That's why I'm asking, not obligated." That small exchange exemplified our new dynamic, offering connection without obligation, maintaining boundaries while creating space for collaboration. Thanksgiving approached, and I decided to host my first major holiday dinner. The guest list included Tyler, Mom, Jessica, and her boyfriend, and a few close friends who had been instrumental during my hardest days. The night before, as Tyler and I prepared the house, he surprised me by dropping to one knee in our half-decorated living room. "I've loved you since before either of us realized it," he said, opening a small velvet box. "Through friendship, hardship, and everything in between. Rachel Evans, will you marry me?" Through happy tears, I said yes. The next day, as our guests gathered around my table, I looked at the faces of my chosen family alongside the mother who had found her way back to me. The journey had been painful, but the destination, this moment of genuine joy and connection, felt worth every difficult step. After dinner, Tyler tapped his glass for attention and announced our engagement. The room erupted in congratulations, Mom's eyes filling with tears of joy. Later, in a quiet moment in the kitchen, she took my hands in hers. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become, Rachel. Not just your success, though that's remarkable, but your capacity to heal, to set boundaries without building walls, to create this beautiful life despite everything." "I had a good foundation," I replied truthfully. "For 22 years, you taught me strength, independence, and resilience. Those lessons didn't disappear, even during the bad times." "Your father would be over the moon about all of this," she said softly. "Especially Tyler. James always said you deserve someone who would see your full light." The mention of Dad brought a bittersweet ache, but no longer the sharp pain it once had. He was part of our shared history, a connection that Frank had temporarily severed, but could never permanently destroy. As we rejoined the others, I reflected on the circular nature of life's hardest lessons. My mother's greatest mistake had led to my greatest growth. The abandonment that once broke me had forced me to discover strengths I never knew I possessed. The business born from desperation had become the vehicle for my most meaningful contributions. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most teach you the greatest lessons about your own strength. Sometimes rock bottom becomes the solid foundation on which you build a life more authentic and fulfilling than you could have imagined. That night, surrounded by love I had both earned and chosen, I realized that true healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about integrating it into a wiser, more compassionate present. The scars remain, but they no longer define the landscape of your heart. What's your experience with setting boundaries with family members? Have you ever had to rebuild trust after it was broken? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and hit that notification bell to join me for more stories about resilience, growth, and finding your strength in unexpected places. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. I'm grateful for each one of you.